"We don't want to see your face at her graduation," my mom snapped, her words cutting through the faint static of our family Zoom call like a knife. My heart froze, and for a moment, the familiar hum of the computer seemed impossibly loud. I stared at the screen, at my parents and my younger sister, Madeline, glowing in their rectangles, smiling as if nothing had happened. My name is Clara, and I had just learned that the family I once trusted could treat me with such blatant cruelty. Madeline, my sister, the girl who had been adored since birth, sat there grinning, her perfect hair and polished demeanor making me feel small, exposed, and unwelcome. She was the golden child, the favorite, the one my parents adored openly. I was the one they whispered about, ignored in family gatherings, and reminded subtly that I was the quiet one, or the different one. The Zoom call had started like any other. My parents had wanted to show me Madeline's graduation setup, to celebrate the day virtually, because I lived across the country. I had thought it would be a happy moment, a chance to reconnect, maybe even feel proud of my sister for her accomplishments. Instead, my mother's voice, sharp and unwavering, struck first. Her tone left no room for misinterpretation. Then my father looked down at his hands, silent, unwilling, or maybe afraid, to intervene. Madeline's eyes flicked to me, a flash of mischief crossing her otherwise perfect face. I could feel her smugness radiating even through pixels. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, to ask why, but the words lodged in my throat. Every instinct screamed that this was more than a moment of anger. There was planning behind their disdain. Years of favoritism had trained me to expect subtle exclusions, quiet manipulations, but hearing it said aloud, broadcasted across the family chat, made it real. Something in me shifted. I noticed the little things I had ignored before, the way my achievements were minimized, the way my contributions were credited to Madeline, the way every birthday, holiday, and milestone had a little more praise for her than for me. This wasn't just family dynamics, it was deliberate, a hierarchy I had been forced to inhabit quietly. As the Zoom call continued, laughter and congratulations echoing for Madeline, a tight knot formed in my chest. But beneath the shock, a small, dangerous seed took root. I realized that being unseen, disregarded, and humiliated had given me something they could never touch: time to plan, patience to strategize, and the determination to make them regret underestimating me. The camera framed Madeline perfectly, her smile bright, her victory on display, but behind it, I felt a growing certainty. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Because the sister they celebrated, the mother who dismissed me, the father who stayed silent, they had no idea that Clara wasn't just watching. She was remembering. And she was already thinking about how to strike back. The days after that Zoom call were heavy, suffocating. I tried to convince myself it was a one-time outburst, that my mother had just lost her temper, but the little things started piling up, each one more unsettling than the last. First, there were the calls. Madeline's phone never stopped buzzing, always in private corners of the house, while my parents laughed and reassured her. When I asked casually who she was talking to, she brushed me off with a smirk. "It's nothing, Clara. Don't worry your head about it." But there was something in her tone, a mix of amusement and secrecy, that made my stomach twist. Then came the subtle favoritism I had always sensed but never fully faced. Invitations to family events were accidentally overlooked for me, with my parents offering vague excuses. "It's complicated, we didn't want to bother you," or "maybe next time." Meanwhile, Madeline was celebrated constantly: early access to resources, praise at work, scholarships, gifts I didn't even know existed. Every little acknowledgement she received felt like a reminder of how invisible I was. Even money seemed to follow her effortlessly. I discovered a credit card in my name had been used to pay for Madeline's graduation decorations, her outfits, and even a small party I wasn't invited to. When I asked about it, My parents downplayed the situation, calling it just convenient and for her sake. The excuses didn't add up, and something about it felt deliberate. At work, things weren't any better. People had started referencing Madeline when discussing achievement and potential. If Madeline can handle this, Clara, you should be fine too, they'd say, as if my efforts were secondary, almost irrelevant. It gnawed at me quietly, making me question myself, my worth, my visibility in the world. I found myself replaying that Zoom call over and over, analyzing every expression, every word, every glance. The laughter, the smiles, the way my mother had leaned in to nod at Madeline. So many small details now screamed that I had been deliberately cast aside. I felt a growing tension, a tight knot in my chest that wouldn't loosen. Sleep became difficult, filled with dreams where I was excluded, humiliated, unseen. And yet, there was something almost sinister in the precision of it all. The cause, the favoritism, the quiet theft of opportunities, they weren't chaotic. They were calculated. I could feel it. Someone in this family was orchestrating a narrative in which I didn't belong, and they were careful enough to cover their tracks. Beneath the hurt, beneath the fatigue, a dangerous thought began to take shape. Maybe this wasn't just bad luck, or parental oversight. Maybe this was deliberate. And if it was, then the question that burned quietly in my mind was, why me? Because the deeper I looked, the more I realized that someone had spent years deciding that Clara wasn't worthy of attention. And that realization both terrified and fueled me. The truth hit me like a lightning strike. I had been feeling the sting of favoritism and secrecy for weeks, but I hadn't expected this. Madeline hadn't just been enjoying the spotlight. She had been actively sabotaging me, ensuring I remained the invisible sibling, the one written off as unworthy. It started with a message from my bank. A series of transactions for college funds, scholarships, and family allowances, money that had been promised to me, had been quietly redirected. And who was listed as the recipient? Madeline. My parents had unknowingly, or worse, knowingly, enabled her to seize what was rightfully mine. Then came the emails from work. Projects I had completed, reports I had poured nights into, had been subtly altered and submitted under Madeline's name. Colleagues who once praised my diligence were now congratulating her, oblivious to the real effort behind the work. I stared at the screen in disbelief, my fingers trembling. She hadn't just stolen recognition, she had rewritten history. I replayed the Zoom call in my mind, the sharpness in my mother's voice, the smug satisfaction on Madeline's face. It all clicked. The late-night secret calls, the hush-hush financial decisions, the constant favoritism, they weren't accidents or oversights. They were part of a pattern, a deliberate effort to isolate me, undermine me, and claim everything I had worked for. Rage bubbled inside me, hot and uncontrollable, mingled with a profound heartbreak. How could someone I had loved, trusted, and shared so many memories with betray me so thoroughly? The sister I had once admired, the family I had believed would protect me, they had all conspired, whether consciously or through blind favoritism, to erase me. Yet even in the midst of the fury, a strange clarity emerged. Madeline had overplayed her hand. Every transaction, every email, every careless brag she had let slip, all of it was evidence, and I had it. She had assumed my silence and inaction would continue indefinitely. She had assumed that being the quiet one meant I would do nothing. The heartbreak was sharp, but the realization that I had a chance to fight back brought a cold, focused energy. This wasn't just about lost money or stolen recognition anymore. It was about justice. About reclaiming my identity, my worth, and the respect I had been denied for years. I sat in stunned silence for a long while, staring at the mountain of proof in front of me. The betrayal was complete, undeniable, and it had awakened something dangerous in me. Somewhere deep down, I knew one thing: Madeline had made a critical mistake. She had underestimated me. An underestimation, I realized with a slow, sharp clarity, was always the first step toward her downfall. I didn't know yet how I would strike back. But I knew I would. And I would make sure she, and everyone who enabled her, would never forget the cost of betrayal. I sat in my room, the evidence spread out in front of me like fragments of my life stolen piece by piece. Each document, each email, each redirected transaction, was a sharp reminder of how Madeline had carefully rewritten my reality. My chest ached, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of betrayal. Years of being overlooked, dismissed, and humiliated culminated in this single, undeniable truth: my family had allowed her to erase me. Tears came unbidden at first, hot and bitter, but as I wiped them away, a strange clarity settled over me. The hurt was still there, raw and familiar, but beneath it, something stronger was rising, something I hadn't felt in a long time: determination. I realized the anger that had bubbled for weeks wasn't just rage, it was fuel. And the heartbreak, sharp as it was, wasn't just pain, it was a map, pointing me toward action. For the first time, I understood something crucial. I could either remain the victim, or I could reclaim my life, my accomplishments, and my dignity. The trigger came unexpectedly. I scrolled through a group chat where Madeline had casually bragged about handling the family funds and keeping everyone in line. Her tone was playful, almost proud. That's when it hit me: the arrogance of her confidence was my opportunity. She had revealed everything by underestimating me. Every secret she thought she had protected, every lie she thought I hadn't noticed, was now an open door. I closed my laptop and sat back, breathing slowly. The path forward was clear. I wouldn't confront her blindly, nor would I cry over lost recognition. I would plan, carefully and deliberately. I would gather every shred of proof, document every lie, and expose the truth at the moment she least expected. For the first time in years, I felt calm. My grief had sharpened into focus, my fear had transformed into patience, and my resentment had solidified into resolve. I realized that the real power had never been in them, it had been in me all along. I simply needed to wield it. I started making a mental checklist: gather all financial records and bank statements. Collect emails and documents proving my work was stolen. Identify witnesses who had seen my efforts and her deception. Set the stage so that when the truth emerged, it could not be ignored. The transformation wasn't instantaneous. It was quiet, like a storm building just out of sight. But I could feel it in every fiber of my body: strength, patience, and the knowledge that I was finally ready. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror and saw a version of myself I hadn't recognized in years: resolute, unyielding, and no longer afraid of the family who had cast me aside. Madeline had thought she had won. She had thought I would remain silent. She had no idea what was coming. I didn't rush. That was the first rule I set for myself. Madeline thrived on speed, quick lies, quick decisions, quick praise. I would win by doing the opposite. Slowly. Methodically. Invisibly. Step 1 was proof. I started with the finances. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I logged into the shared family accounts I still had limited access to. I downloaded statements, highlighted suspicious transfers, and cross-checked dates. Every scholarship deposit that should have been linked to my name had been rerouted. Every reimbursement for projects I'd worked on had quietly landed in Madeline's account. I saved everything: screenshots, PDFs, backups stored in 3 separate places. If she ever tried to deny it, I wanted facts that spoke louder than emotions. Step 2 was the stolen credit. I went through old emails, school portals, and project folders. My drafts. My ideas. My timestamps. Side-by-side comparisons showed how my work had magically appeared under Madeline's name days later. I didn't confront anyone. Not yet. I forwarded copies to a private folder and labeled each one carefully. Evidence only mattered if it was organized. Step 3 was witnesses. I reached out casually, former teachers, a counselor, even a family friend, who had once praised my work before Madeline stepped in to claim it. I didn't accuse. I asked neutral questions. Do you remember who submitted that proposal? Do you recall who stayed late working on that project? Their answers came slowly, but they came. And each one strengthened the foundation beneath my plan. Meanwhile, Madeline still felt untouchable. In the family group chat, she posted graduation countdowns and humblebrag captions. My mother commented with hearts and praise. My name was never mentioned. During another Zoom call, Mom laughed and said, "Everything's finally falling into place." Madeline smiled like a queen surveying conquered land. Good. Step 4 was timing. The graduation ceremony wasn't just a celebration, it was a stage. Family would be present. Relatives who hadn't picked sides yet. Teachers. Administrators. People who mattered. I marked the date on my calendar and worked backward, aligning every piece so it would surface at the exact moment denial would be impossible. Finally, step 5 was the trap. I let Madeline believe I was gone. Broken. Silent. I stopped responding. I unfollowed. I disappeared just enough to make her careless. She grew louder, more confident, slipping up in messages, joking openly about handling things behind the scenes. Every slip was another nail in the illusion she'd built. At night, anxiety still crept in. My hands shook sometimes as I reviewed the files. One wrong move could destroy me instead. But then I'd remember her voice. "We don't want to see your face at her graduation." She thought she had erased me. What she didn't know was that I was rebuilding myself in the shadows. And the closer graduation day came, the heavier the air felt. Because soon, the spotlight she loved so much would turn. And when it did, there would be nowhere left for her to hide. Graduation day arrived with the usual fanfare, the kind that masks nerves with applause and bright smiles. Madeline stood at the center of it all, radiant, confident, and completely oblivious to what was coming. She believed she had won, family, friends, teachers, everyone on her side, while I remained in the shadows, supposedly silenced. I arrived quietly, dressed professionally, carrying not only my presence, but the culmination of weeks of meticulous planning. The moment felt cinematic, like the calm before a storm no one could see coming. Madeline gave a rehearsed, charming speech about perseverance, about overcoming obstacles, about leadership. The crowd cheered. Cameras flashed. And then, my moment arrived. "Excuse me," I said, stepping forward. The hush was instantaneous. "I'd like to clarify a few details regarding these projects and achievements." Her smile faltered. The room turned. Phones were raised. A few whispers began. I projected the evidence onto a nearby screen. Every project she had taken credit for, every report she had claimed as her own, every redirected scholarship and financial aid deposit, all clearly documented, with dates, timestamps, and correspondence showing my authorship. Emails, bank statements, and teacher confirmations flashed in front of the entire audience. The crowd murmured in disbelief. Cameras zoomed in. Even my parents' faces shifted from shock to horror. Madeline stammered, attempting to defend herself. But the proof was undeniable. Each lie she had woven, every boast she had made, crumbled publicly. Teachers and administrators nodded to me, confirming what the evidence showed. Relatives whispered, incredulous, that the golden child had been manipulating recognition all along. The humiliation was swift and total. Madeline's polished smile melted into panic. She tried to regain control, but every attempt only highlighted her deception further. I didn't speak again. I let the evidence, the witnesses, and the truth do all the work. By the time the ceremony ended, the tables had turned completely. I had reclaimed not only my accomplishments, but also my dignity. My parents, finally facing the consequences of favoritism, looked at me differently, not with shame, necessarily, but with the unmistakable realization that they had underestimated me for years. Madeline slunk out, avoiding eye contact, the crown she had worn so proudly now a symbol of arrogance undone. The sister who had shouted at me on Zoom, "We don't want to see your face at her graduation," had been exposed in front of the very audience she had sought to impress. As I walked out, applause replaced murmurs, but this time it was for me, for my intelligence, patience, and resilience. Justice wasn't just served, it was seen. And in that moment, I understood, revenge wasn't about cruelty. It was about reclaiming what's yours and letting truth shine brighter than lies ever could. Madeline thought she had erased me. She was wrong. And now, everyone knew it. The days after the graduation were surreal. Madeline avoided everyone, friends, colleagues, and especially our parents. The golden child, once untouchable and adored, had been exposed. Every boast, every claim, every subtle manipulation unraveled in front of an audience that now saw her for what she really was. A master of deception undone by the quiet sibling she had thought powerless. I, on the other hand, felt a freedom I hadn't known in years. My work, my accomplishments, and my worth were no longer invisible. Colleagues acknowledged my contributions openly. Teachers who had seen me struggle silently in the past praised my dedication. Even my parents, though awkward and silent at first, began to treat me with the respect I had long been denied. But the greatest satisfaction wasn't in the applause or the recognition, it was in the knowledge that truth had its own power. Madeline's arrogance had blinded her. My patience had sharpened me. And the moment of revelation, the slow, undeniable exposure of her lies, had shifted the balance permanently. Life didn't instantly become perfect. There were still whispers, awkward gatherings, and lingering tension. But I was no longer bound by anyone else's perception. I had learned that being underestimated, dismissed, or overlooked isn't a weakness, it's an opportunity. A chance to observe, plan, and rise stronger than ever. I began pursuing projects I had postponed, traveling for workshops, mentoring younger colleagues, and investing in opportunities that reflected my own ambitions, not someone else's shadow. Every step was a reminder that the quiet one, the overlooked sibling, could command the room without raising her voice. And Madeline. She learned the hardest lesson: the louder you boast, the more spectacular your fall can be when truth catches up. The sister who had once snapped at me over a Zoom call, declaring I was unwanted, had now become a cautionary tale. To all of you watching this story, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Have you ever been dismissed, overlooked, or made to feel invisible? Share your experiences in the comments. And if you want more stories of clever justice, resilience, and triumph, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because sometimes, the quietest person in the room has the loudest victory. And remember this, the sister who said, "We don't want to see your face," thought she had erased me, but she only made me the storm she could never withstand.